Okay, thank you very much for the invitation to speak. Hopefully you can hear me and see the slides.
Yep.
So I will give a update on our NIST post-quantum crypto standardization effort, tell you a little bit about where we've been, where we are, where we're going in the future. And at the end, happy to answer any of your questions on anything that I'm able to. So you're probably familiar with this kind of introductory material, so I'll go through it a little bit quicker. I'm at NIST, which is in the Department of Commerce. NIST does a lot of very cool science. My area of NIST deals with the cryptography. Specifically, our job is to select secure crypto systems for the federal government. But we know that the algorithms that we select end up getting adopted very widely by industry and around the world. And we've been doing this a while, and there are always new challenges, new things being discovered, new attacks to protect against, so on and so forth. So today, speaking specifically, we'll be focusing more on public key cryptography. It gets used in a variety of ways. One of the main usage that it gets used for is to establish a shared key with another party. And then once you've established that shared key, you can switch over and use symmetric key cryptography to encrypt more of your data. So this is often done in internet protocols like TLS or IAC. Another very important use of public key cryptography is also digital signatures, where you are able to authenticate yourself electronically, and another party can verify that you created the signature, and then they can be assured of that authentication. So of course, with all of this, quantum computers have come into the mix recently, or at least our worries and fears and some of the threats of what a quantum computer can do. So there have been various headlines over the past 5 years, 10 years, where we are seeing more and more organizations that are trying to build quantum computers. Presumably governments are doing the same thing as well. And there has been kind of some steady progress that these quantum computers are getting larger and larger. So a quantum computer, I'm not going to go in depth or anything, but they are machines that operate on fundamentally a different paradigm than the computers that most of us are used to with our experience. So they use principles of quantum physics and quantum mechanics rather than the classical Newtonian physics to process information. One of the ways it's easy to see a difference between classical computers and quantum computers is the concept of a qubit or a quantum bit. In our classical computers, information is stored as a bit, which is either a 0 or a 1. A qubit can actually represent more than one state simultaneously. So it can hold a 0 and a 1 state at the same time. So if you're able to put together a string of n qubits, naively we can think about this as holding 2 to the n different states. And if we can come up with an...
Please all go on mute.
Needs to be on mute. Thanks. Yep. So if we were able to design an algorithm that can use all of those n qubits, naively we can think of this as an algorithm which is operating on 2 to the n computers in parallel, with just one computer. Now it's more complicated than that. The principles of superposition and entanglement, and when you make a measurement, superposition collapses. But it gives the intuition as to why quantum computers have this potential to give an explosion in computational power for certain applications and certain problems. These applications will be very, very beneficial to society, which is why people are working very hard to build these quantum computers. There will be advances in medicine and drug design and better forecasting and modeling. So, a lot of very, very positive things. As we'll see, there are some negative effects for cryptography, which keep cryptographers up at night. But I do want to point out quantum computers are, while they have a lot of potential, they are not, they're not going to completely change everything. There's still a lot of work to build a quantum computer which is large enough to do applications to threaten cryptography, and it's going to take a lot of effort to get there. These machines are very delicate and precise. Often to work on them, these machines have to be operating in vacuums at temperatures near absolute zero, and they're only able to do computations that last just a small fraction of a second before the air accumulates too much and you start losing what you're trying to get out of them. They will not solve all problems. There are certain problems which we know that they will do better than classical computers, but they are not universal machines that will just do everything better than our current classical computers. Okay, so why do cryptographers, why have they been focusing on these? And that's because in the 1990s, there was 2 algorithms discovered that would have a very large impact with regards to the crypto systems which we use today. The first of these is due to Dr. Peter Shor, who discovered an algorithm that we now call Shor's algorithm that would solve 2 different mathematical problems, the integer factorization and what's called the discrete logarithm problem. Well, it turns out those 2 problems are what all of our current public key crypto systems that we use today base their security on. So if we had a large enough quantum computer that could run Shor's algorithm, it would completely break all our public key crypto systems. So that's a pretty drastic effect. The second algorithm is known as Grover's algorithm. It's not quite as much as a speed up. It's a quadratic speed up rather than exponential, but it's more generic. If you were doing like a brute force key search, you could do that for any algorithm. You'd get a square root speed up. And so that has to be taken into account as well. So these are the main 2 algorithms that play a role with regards to the quantum threat to cryptography that we use today. So specifically, at NIST, we have various cryptographic standards which tell the government and other organizations that follow these standards which crypto systems are safe to use and how to implement them in a standard way. So this little chart shows various of our standards. We have public key standards, we have symmetric key standards, other documents on random number generation or hash functions, key management, that kind of thing. So because of the quantum threat that is posed from Shor's algorithm on a large-scale quantum computer, every single one of the public key algorithms would be vulnerable in our standards. That includes algorithms like the Diffie-Hellman, the elliptic curve version of the Diffie-Hellman, and also RSA, both encryption and signatures, as well as the elliptic curve digital signature algorithm. And we couldn't simply scale up parameters. We can't simply just say, okay, we're using RSA 2048 today. Let's go up to, let's go crazy and go up to RSA 16K. We'll be safe. Nope, Shor's algorithm won't allow you to do that. Once the quantum computer is big enough, changing parameters like that won't buy you very much time at all. Now, some of our other cryptographic standards will also be impacted because of Grover's algorithm. This includes our symmetric key algorithms like AES and our hash functions SHA-2 and SHA-3. These are very, very widely used algorithms. We rely on them. The impact is not as drastic. We would need to use longer key lengths, potentially, use longer outputs from our hash function, but that is much more manageable to do. If we need to, say, transition from using AES with a 128-bit key to using a 192-bit key or a 256-bit key, we don't have to swap out the algorithm, so that's easier to do. So there is work to be done there as well, but the focus is largely on the public key cryptography side because we need completely new algorithms. So just to kind of summarize the quantum threat and how do we protect against it, we need to find new cryptographic algorithms which are secure against quantum computers. Now, not just quantum computers, they also need to still be secure against classical computers. Classical computers are not going away. In many cases, they will still present the best known attacks on various crypto systems. So what quantum throws in the mix is just another attack surface that we have to protect against, but we still have to protect against all the known different avenues for attack as well. Now, the name of this field is known as quantum resistant cryptography, or what's very commonly known as also post-quantum cryptography. Now, even though it's got the word quantum in this, the algorithms that are being researched are not going to be run on quantum machines. They are not for quantum computers. They're still going to be run on classical computers. If and when some organization builds a quantum computer that's large enough to threaten cryptography, it's not going to be like everybody has a quantum computer, in their garage, or that our phones are going to be powered by quantum computers. We expect that the classical computing technology that we use today is going to last many, many decades. And it's unlikely that quantum computers would completely ever replace our current classical computing infrastructure that we have. So these algorithms need to run on classical computers and just protect against attacks from both classical and quantum computers. One other distinction, I'm using the word quantum, I'm using the word cryptography. There's something called quantum cryptography, but what I'm talking about today with post-quantum cryptography is actually a different subject than what's known as quantum cryptography in the literature. Quantum cryptography is also known as, by another name, quantum key distribution. And the concept with quantum crypto, or with QKD, is that you are using quantum technology to build crypto systems. The interesting thing about this is that you can get guaranteed unconditional security that's guaranteed by the laws of physics, at least in a theoretical sense. In practice, there's some challenges that when you implement these to get that theoretically guaranteed security. There are known limitations to what QKD can do. You can do key exchange or equivalently encryption, but it is not known how to do digital signatures to provide authentication using quantum cryptography. Quantum networks that are being built to implement quantum cryptography are not very scalable, and they need expensive and special hardware. So for instance, a typical network that's being built between two nodes, you can only go maybe 50 to 100 kilometers before you need to have a new node and have a repeater there. So while they can be built, it is not as scalable as software and classical computers, where the internet covers the globe very easily. It is more difficult for quantum computers to do that. Now, there are ideas on how to improve this. China has launched a satellite that can do QKD. Many European countries are also working on launching satellites that can also do QKD. And there are important applications where this can be useful, where you need very high security, and perhaps where you can afford the expensive and special hardware that's needed for this. But it is not expected that QKD is what is going to be widely deployed to protect our information, to provide the security that we're used to today. That's going to come from public key cryptography and symmetric key cryptography that is implemented on classical computers using the new algorithms that I'm going to be talking about today. So in summary there, quantum cryptography, there is uses for it, but it's not what I'm talking about today. It's not what NIST is focused on, nor what most organizations around the world are going to be switching to provide protection from quantum attacks. All right, so hopefully I've covered Yes, go ahead. No? Okay. So hopefully I've motivated the threat about why cryptographers are concerned. I'm going to talk about what we're doing to address that threat, what are the solutions, but it's also important to know about when do we need to worry about this threat. Of course, it's an active research question. Nobody knows for certain when a quantum computer will be built. The best we can do is talk to experts in the field and ask them, based on the progress that you're seeing, based on your expertise and knowledge, when do you think it's likely we could have a quantum computer that's big enough to break current levels of cryptography? So Dr. Michele Mosca and some of his colleagues at the Global Risk Institute every year put out a survey to a lot of experts to ask this question. And again, perhaps this survey is biased because you're asking the experts in the field and so on, but it at least gives us some information about what they think, and maybe we can make some inferences from it. So they have a whole report that you can go look at. The chart that I'm showing on this slide summarizes kind of the main survey results. If you look at the bottom row, most of the experts that they surveyed think that there's a pretty small chance, less than 1% or a less than 5% chance that we'll get a big enough quantum computer in 5 years. If we go up to 10 years, we start to see the numbers shift. And by the time we get to 15 years, most of the respondents think that there is a greater than 30% chance that we will have a quantum computer. And 30% is a significant number that we probably should not ignore. So again, nobody knows for certain, but this maybe gives us an idea that in 10 to 15 years, it could be possible to have a large enough quantum computer that would threaten cryptography. Such a machine is sometimes called a cryptographically relevant quantum computer. Now, we may just say, okay, well, we've got 10 or 15 years, we can just kick this can down the road and worry about it later. It turns out that that is not the case. And this is due to a threat that's known as harvest now, decrypt later, or store now, decrypt later. You can write it out in kind of as a mathematical theorem, but you can explain it in words in a way that's pretty easy to understand. So imagine you have a lot of data that you stored in the cloud that you need protected, and so you've encrypted it. And perhaps when you're transmitting it or uploading it, your adversary or some enemy that you don't want is able to get access to that encrypted data and make a copy of it. Now, you're not too concerned because it's encrypted, so they can't read it. But suppose that data is protecting information that you need secure for 15, 20 years. Maybe it's financial information that's subject to regulation. Maybe it's health information. Maybe it's national security systems. Well, what if a quantum computer comes out in 10 years and they're able to use that quantum computer and get access to your data in 10 years that you're wanting to protect for 20 years? Well, then you're already in trouble today, even though the quantum computer is not yet being built. So this just helps us understand the need that we are actually at risk today from future attacks, and we need to have solutions developed as quickly as we can to protect our information. To underscore the seriousness of this, the United States government has been taking actions over the past few years. There have been some national security memos put out from the White House. Those were followed up by a memo from the Office of Management and Budget that gave some detailed steps that federal agencies needed to comply with to begin the transition to algorithms that would protect them. The National Security Agency updated what's called the Commercial National Security Algorithm Suite 2.0 to include the threat to quantum computers and to add the algorithms that NIST is going to standardize, which we'll get to here in a minute. Congress also got in on the act by passing a law that's, I forget the exact name, but something like the Quantum Cybersecurity Preparedness Act, also mandating that federal agencies needed to take all these steps that are being talked about. Overall, the goal of the United States government is that we need to get as much of our systems transitioned as possible by 2035, which is in 11 years. It's an ambitious goal. We will definitely have been able to migrate many of the systems, but I think it's unlikely we will be completely done with the transition at that point. Okay, so now I'm going to transition over and talk a little bit about the solutions and what's being done. So at NIST, we've been aware of the threat for a long while, for a few decades, but it wasn't until 2016 that we started taking some concrete steps to create new standards that would protect us from these quantum threats. So in 2016, we announced that we would be doing basically a large international cryptographic competition to select new algorithms, new public key cryptographic algorithms for standardization to replace the ones that would be vulnerable to Shor's algorithm. Now, NIST has done this sort of thing in the past. We used a cryptographic competition to select AES as the block cipher that we standardized and is very widely used today. More recently, we did the SHA-3 competition to select a new hash function. But we knew this competition would be more complicated than those ones we've done in the past. PQC is a very active research field. And there's a lot of new concepts, a lot of new mathematical ideas that was going to be make this more challenging of a process. Our role was, in our eyes, to manage the process to achieve community consensus in a transparent and a timely manner. So we invited researchers to design algorithms, to send them into us, complete with code to implement the algorithms. We posted the specifications and the code on our website, and then we could internally evaluate the algorithms, and the cryptographic community as well was invited to analyze these algorithms. The outcome of this that we envisioned was not a single winner, but that there would be a small number of algorithms selected for standardization. And there's a few reasons for this. First of all, we needed to have digital signatures as well as public key encryption or key establishment. So we would need different algorithms for each of those. And then also, because PQC is an active research field, we want to not just have one encryption algorithm or one digital signature algorithm, because perhaps in the future, someone will come up with a brilliant new attack. We need to have other algorithms in place to have a diversity of security assumptions so that we're always ready and have an algorithm available to protect our information. Now, when we announced this, we announced the criteria we would be using. First and foremost, security. Second, performance. And then third, a number of other properties. Security, there's a lot of different ways to measure it. We defined 5 security categories so that submitters could pick parameters and tell us that, okay, these parameters provide security level 1, which means it's hard to break as AES 128. And that enabled us to help compare these algorithms together, even though it's still a little bit like comparing apples and oranges. So those are the criteria that we used. It was truly a worldwide effort. There was submissions with researchers from around the globe, and that was very cool to see, all 6 continents and a whole lot of countries. This process went on from 2016 up until July of 2022, and it was organized in rounds. So in the first round, we took all the algorithms that were sent in. We held a workshop. Every team got to present their algorithm. There was a lot of different research done. A lot of the algorithms were broken. And then at the end of the first round, we selected the most promising algorithms to move on into a second round. And then similar for the second round, and then similar for the third round. So the second round had 26 candidates, and then the third round had 7 finalists and 8 alternates that were being evaluated. At the conclusion of each round, we wrote a report. So if you're interested in the details, I'd refer you to those reports, which talk about why we selected the schemes that we did to move on into the next round. So this all ultimately, the third round wrapped up in July of 2022 when we were able to announce the algorithms that we would be standardizing. So we announced 4 algorithms. The first of these was Crystal's Kyber, which is what's called a key encapsulation mechanism. Equivalently, this is a public key encryption algorithm. On the digital signature side, we selected 3 algorithms for standardization. These were Crystal's Dilithium, Falcon, and Sphinx Plus. Again, if you want details as to why these were the ones in particular that were selected, I'd point you to the report, NIST 8413, to explain all that. You may have noticed that there are 3 signatures and only one chem or encryption algorithm. We do intend to standardize more than one chem. So we still have 4 algorithms that are around in a 4th round of evaluation. And we will select 1 or 2 of those algorithms for standardization as well to join Crystal's Kyber. So I'll talk more about each of these things here. But this is kind of the summary at the end of round 3 that we were able to announce. Just one slide to kind of summarize the 4 that we did select. Kyber, dilithium, and Falcon are all based on a mathematical structure called lattices, specifically structured lattices. All 3 have really good all-around performance and security. Now we chose 2 lattice-based signatures. Dilithium is a little bit bigger than Falcon, but it's simpler to implement, and Falcon has a really complex implementation. So some applications may need that smaller signature that Falcon has, but the complicated implementation that needs floating point arithmetic and Gaussian sampling might be better served by using a simpler implementation if you can handle the slightly larger signatures with dilithium. So Kyber and dilithium are the main 2 algorithms that we think most applications will use, but Falcon is available if you need smaller signatures. Sphinx Plus was selected kind of as a backup. It's widely viewed as very, very conservative in regards to security, but its performance is a lot worse than dilithium or Falcon. It's bigger and it's slower. So if performance isn't as much of a concern, Sphinx Plus is also available and will be standardized. So here's a timeline looking back at where we were and kind of where we're going into the future. So we've announced the algorithms that we are working on standardization. We are having a workshop coming up in just 2 months that will be held in person here in Rockville. And of course, everyone is invited to attend. At this workshop, we will discuss the algorithms that we are standardizing. We'll also discuss the algorithms that are in the 4th round that are still being evaluated. And we'll also talk a little bit about some additional signatures that are involved in future work for standardization. Now, the 4 algorithms that we selected for standardization, we were able to release draft standards last August and put them out for public comment. After a few months, the deadline was in November, and we received a lot of feedback on the draft standards. So currently what we are doing right now is we're reading all those comments. We're making any of the changes that we feel are needed from that comments. And we will finalize and publish these algorithms. We expect that they should be done around summer of this year, 2024. So that is the exciting time when we will have the first PQC standards. Specifically, these are going to be released in documents known as what we call FIPS, or Federal Information Processing Standards. Kyber is in FIPS 203. Being the government, we had to give all these neat government acronyms. So Kyber will be known as MLChem. Dilithium is in FIPS 204, will be known as MLDSA. Sphinx Plus is in FIPS 205, and it will be known as SLH-DSA. Falcon is the 4th algorithm that we selected. We're still writing that standard. We haven't yet released the draft. It'll probably be available later this year. We wanted to prioritize getting the dilithium standard done first. So in these standards, they have the complete specifications for how you will implement these algorithms, what these specific parameter sets, how much security they provide, kind of all those details. We are always welcome to feedback on that. The public comment period ended, but we're always, as I said, open to feedback on anything you want to tell us with regard to the standards. We do have a few algorithms, as I mentioned, in the 4th round that are being evaluated. These are chems or encryption algorithms, and one or two of these will be selected to be standardized to augment our portfolio with Crystal's Kyber. Classic McLeese, Bike, and HQC are all based on what are called code-based cryptography. There's a fourth algorithm called Psych. It was based on isogenies of elliptic curves, but a year or two ago it was broken, and the Psych team acknowledged that the algorithm is completely dead and should not be used. So it's technically in the fourth round, but Psych's no longer really in the picture. And as to what we will select, Bike and HQC have more balanced performance, closer to the lattice-based algorithms. So it's likely we would select either one of Bike or HQC. And potentially we could also select Classic McLeese. Kind of like Sphinx Plus, we're more confident in its security, but it has very, very large public keys. So the performance might be a challenge for some applications. Now, we also have started some future standardization work, which we call the on-ramp for digital signatures. So we selected 3 signatures for standardization. We have signatures which we're very happy with. Dilithium and Falcon are both based on lattices. And what we would like when we looked at this is we wanted to have another general purpose digital signature algorithm that's not based on lattices. We did select Sphinx Plus. It is not based on lattices, but it is a lot, as I said, bigger and slower. So it may not be able to be used by many applications. So we announced a new call for digital signatures not based on lattices that would be general purpose digital signature algorithms. So this is a process which we kicked off. We received submissions last summer. I'll show the numbers on the next page. And this process will last several years. Again, we will go through multiple rounds of evaluation and analysis before we could potentially select any algorithms to be standardized. It's not expected these algorithms would replace dilithium as the main algorithm. This is, again, kind of searching for some good backup digital signature algorithms just to be very, very well prepared. We do not have a similar process planned for encryption or chems. We're happy with the choice of Kyber and either Bike or HQC. All of those have very good performance. Yeah, so just the numbers, we have 40 submissions that met our requirements. If you go up on our webpage, you can see their complete specifications and codes. They are currently under evaluation. You're welcome to take a look at them, to try them out, see how they work. If you have any feedback, we'd be happy to hear it. Right now, we're still in the first round, although the first round is nearing an end where we will select a smaller number to move on into a second round of evaluation. Now, there are some algorithms that provide protection from quantum attacks that have been standardized that were outside the scope of our competition type process. These are known as stateful hash-based signatures. They've been around, at least known how to do them since the 1970s, and they were standardized by the IETF in some RFCs, RFC 8391 and 8554. NIST then also created one of our own standards, Special Publication 800-208, to standardize the same algorithms. The thing about these signatures is that these are not general purpose digital signatures because they are what's called stateful. You have to manage the state, and if you're not careful and leak any of that, you completely lose all of the security of the algorithm. So while they do provide protection from quantum attacks, they should only be used in certain applications where you can put controls in place to handle the state. Some examples of this would be citing software or firmware updates. And actually, the CNSA 2.0, released by the National Security Agency, specifically allowed these algorithms in SP 800-208 for signing software and firmware updates. The advantage is that these have been standardized for a number of years now, and so you can use them immediately but again, only for certain applications. Now, a lot of the focus now that we know the algorithms and that the standards are almost here has been on the transition and the migration to these algorithms. And of course, there's been a lot of work on this, and there still is a lot of work to be done. NIST will provide more transition guidance once the PQC standards are finalized and published, because it's hard to give a lot of guidance until those standards are published, because we can't tell you to transition to them. Shortly after the standards are published, we will also have timelines published as to when we think you need to transition to the new algorithms, when you need to be off the old algorithms, things like that. Now, there's been a lot of talk on one transition strategy that's known as a hybrid or a composite mode. And that's the idea that you are going to use a post-quantum algorithm with a current algorithm that we use today. And so there's some reasons for this. If you combine them in the right way, which cryptographers know how to do, you are able to put them into a hybrid mode, where in order to break the security, you would have to break the security of both of the different algorithms. So people like this idea as a way to transition, because these new PQC algorithms are newer. We don't have implementations yet that have been around and have been as battle tested, that have been out for a number of years. So as a way to transition, if you do a hybrid mode, you could be using the PQC algorithm, and it's providing protection against quantum attacks. You're also using a classical algorithm, and since the quantum computer is not yet here, that's still providing protection. But if maybe some bug or flaw is found in the implementation of the PQC side, some vulnerability is there, until that's patched, well, you're using the classical algorithm that's already standardized and approved, and that would continue to be providing protections, because it would not have had that flaw. So there are some advantages there, security-wise, that this is a good conservative strategy to transition. Of course, implementing two different cryptographic algorithms, you pay a performance price. You're going to be, roughly double the computation that you would be doing if you just had one algorithm. So there are some trade-offs. There's also the trade-off of complexity. If you have to transition to a hybrid mode, and then maybe in the future potentially transition off the hybrid mode just to PQC, some of the complexity of how you do that and how you combine these could leave room for making some errors, or there could be bugs introduced that way. So it's just to say that there are a number of issues to be aware of when you're considering hybrid. We have heard from industry that there's a lot of interest in the hybrid mode as a way to transition. They feel it makes sense, that while there is a performance hit, it wouldn't be too bad, and that they can handle that. A number of governments around the world have agreed with this opinion. Germany and France, among others, have put out their guidance for quantum-resistant algorithms, indicating that for their national needs, that they recommend a hybrid mode, or they require a hybrid mode. On the flip side, not everyone agrees. For instance, the National Security Agency has gone on record that they think it might introduce more complexity, and it might be simpler to just transition straight away to the PQC algorithms. NIST hasn't taken a firm stance on which is right, which is wrong, or what you should do. We've largely said it's going to depend on the application, what community you're working with, considering all the different factors and seeing what is right for you. And we've been participating in that conversation. We've been providing information so that you know about all the different aspects of hybrid, the advantages and any potential disadvantages. In our SP 856C, we allowed a way to accommodate a certain hybrid mode. Basically, what it allows for is to get FIPS validation. If you're doing the hybrid mode as prescribed in that document, the FIPS validation wouldn't be saying anything about the PQC algorithm, because that has not yet been standardized. It would only be validating the classical algorithm that already is standardized. But by having that PQC algorithm in there, you would be potentially providing, protection from a quantum attack. So we accommodate a hybrid mode. We are going to give more guidance around hybrid modes and how to combine Kyber with other algorithms in a way to preserve security. This will be in a document known as SP 800-227 that we hope to come out the same time our final standards come out. That will have guidance on chems. It's going to be more general guidance. It's not going to be specific. Here's how you have to do it. We're not going to require anything. We're hoping largely to stay in alignment with other organizations like the CFRG of the IETF so that we can settle on a small number of ways to combine these algorithms. So in summary, a hybrid mode makes sense. Industry seems interested in it, but not everyone is necessarily, and there are advantages and disadvantages to be aware of, and we think it depends on the particular application, whether you will want to do that. Now, with the migration as well, I want to mention our NIST has what's called the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence that is running a migration to PQC project to facilitate the migration to the algorithms that we are standardizing. So to do this, the NCCOE has partnered with a number of industry partners, as well as other federal agencies to advance some of the US government PQC initiatives. So the goal of this is to develop tools, documents, playbooks as to how to ease the migration for organizations. They hold in-person events. I think the last one was this last August, and more are coming up. They also host webinars to answer questions as well. The project is organized into a couple different work streams. One work stream is on discovery tools. One of the first steps in the migration is to try and figure out what cryptographic algorithms that you are using that are vulnerable to quantum attacks. So in other words, where is the public key cryptography? And so that's one work stream. A second work stream is on interoperability, and the third is on performance. And these work streams have weekly calls and meetings where they are making progress and discussing together how to advance in this different direction. They're also writing up what they've learned in documents. So here's a timeline kind of showing the past few years. This timeline hasn't been updated all the way. It shows that they released draft SP 1800 Volume A, which is an executive summary of this migration to PQC project. Just in December, they also released Volume B and Volume C, which are reports on the other work streams, kind of more detailed information as to what we learned so far about performance, interoperability, and discovery tools. I showed a list earlier of some of the partners. That wasn't quite the full list. These are a list of all the different companies that have signed on and are official partners of the PQC project. So it covers a variety of different, sectors and organizations that are all contributing in different ways. And we're very happy to be working with a lot of this, the talent and the expertise that they have here. I've mentioned the CNSA 2.0 from the National Security Agency. I also just wanted to put a slide here on, they have a whole report and webpage with more information, but just two of kind of the main charts that show their timeline and the algorithms that they are approving for use to protect national security systems. So on the left, you see a timeline for migration where they show different applications like software firmware signing, web browsers, cloud, network equipment, operating systems, along with goals as to when you need to transition to the new algorithms. And on the right, you can see that the algorithms that are available to protect national security information, and these include AES, which we already use, along with the new PQC algorithms, Kyber, dilithium, and LMS and XMSS, which are the stateful hash-based signatures. NSA is got these goals to meet the transition timeline that was put out in National Security Memo 10 of 2035. In fact, you can see on their slide here, they're hoping to be 2 years early. Now, NIST is not the only organization that is focused on standardization. There are many other standards organizations and expert bodies working on this. NIST is in collaboration and communication with all of these. We're coordinating and working together. So I don't think I'll talk too much in detail about any of these, other than many of them are using the algorithms that came out of our process and are going to be standardizing or using them as well. So what are some things that organizations can do now to prepare for the transition and the migration? I'd say one place to look is if you look at the Office of Management budget memo that came out about 1.5 years ago. It has a lot of good detailed steps, and I'll outline some of them on the next slide. There was also a fact sheet put out by CISA, NSA, and NIST called Quantum Readiness, Migration to PQC that had good detailed information. It included things like starting with a cryptographic inventory, creating your post-quantum roadmap with your vendors, looking at your supply chain quantum readiness, making sure your staff is developing a knowledge base and tracking developments in PQC, as well as just the developments in building quantum computers. Testing the algorithms. We don't recommend you bake these into your products yet until the final standards are done, but you can certainly begin testing them. And just kind of the sooner that you prepare, the better off that you'll be. And then here are some of the specific things that the OMB memo said that federal agencies needed to do. They needed to designate a person to be leading the migration, figure out how much funding this was going to take. Testing algorithms was encouraged. They were supposed to start on their inventory and report this back up so the government could collect all this information and, kind of seeing it from the top down, how everything is going. All of this is to, again, work towards the government's goal of migration by 2035 as much as possible. So with that, I will wrap up here. It's very nice that we are almost at the point where we have the final PQC standards published and done. Very exciting time for us at NIST to get that milestone. That said, it is not the end. There's a lot of future work with PQC. There's a lot of the migration that still has to be worked out. There will be future standardization of PQC algorithms because every algorithm from here on out needs to be post-quantum. So it's not the end. There's plenty of work to do. NIST is very grateful for everybody's efforts. We have a very strong team here, but we couldn't have done or can do all the work that needs to be done. So we're thankful to all the different organizations around the world, the cryptographic community that's all working on this. And then just some, of course, if you need more information, we have a webpage. And if you haven't heard about it, we have what's called the PQC Forum. It's an online mailing list that you can ask questions. We use it for announcements, for getting feedback on various topics. So kind of anything related to PQC standardization is up for discussion on there. And if you go to our webpage, there's instructions on how to sign up. And then you can always, contact me or the team directly as well. So with that, I will stop here and I'll be happy to answer any questions in the time that's left.
Dr. Moody, there are a few questions in the chat.
Okay, I can pull that up here. Okay.
Sure.
Let's see. So the first question I see says, can you speak to when the PQC standards for the usage of the new algorithms will be published? Yeah, so I think I got to that later, but just to remind you, we're actively revising the drafts based on the public comment received, and we are expecting this summer roughly is when we expect them to be published. The next question says, you mentioned Sphinx Plus has performance concerns. Is it more secure than the other options? Is it a trade-off to the performance? Well, I would say it's viewed as more conservative with regards to security. If we look at the design, the security of Sphinx Plus relates back to the security of hash functions, which we understand a lot better. And most cryptographers are very, very confident that we understand that just fine. and it's very unlikely that quantum computers will lead to finding an attack on hash functions. So yeah, it's widely viewed as more conservative with regards to security. That said, that doesn't mean that the algorithms we selected based on lattices have security concerns. It's just that we have probably a little bit more confidence with Sphinx Plus, but performance is a trade-off there. So Kyber and dilithium, well, so comparing it to dilithium, a signature algorithm, dilithium has signatures that are maybe 2,000 bytes, a public key that's similar size. Falcon's even a little bit smaller. Sphinx Plus has keys and signatures that at their smallest are around 10,000 bytes. And depending on the specific version you choose, are a little bit larger. And then if you look at the specific performance, like how many cycles or how many milliseconds does it take to generate a signature or to verify, it's not as fast as dilithium. So yeah, that's what I'd say about Sphinx Plus. It is kind of a trade-off between security and performance in that regard. I think those are the only questions I see on the chat.
So we can turn it over to audience questions.
Right.
Okay. So Dr. Moody, a general question is, you kind of laid it out there or alluded to it, but your priorities from your requests from industry, what would be the main takeaways that industry should leave this call with to understand how we can best help you?
Well, we always welcome feedback on testing out the algorithms and seeing how they're working for your applications and your protocols. That's always useful feedback. The standards are not yet finalized, so if there's anything we need to know before we finalize them, that would be good to know. Also, just participating in the migration to PQC project. That is a good venue, working on the discovery tools, working on the interoperability work stream, so that we can develop resources and tools that will help everybody manage the migration even quicker.
Any other questions? Okay.
You're letting me off easy. Thank you.
All right. Well, Dr. Moody, we absolutely appreciate this, and yeah, we thank you for your time. If there are any further questions, again, you can reach out to Tim or myself, and we can make contact with Dr. Moody and see if we can get those answered. But Dr. Moody, thank you so much. Greatly appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.